Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be here. It's a real privilege and an honor to be with you in New York City. And I'm really excited to introduce to you and hear with you from our terrific panelists. We have some really interesting stories to hear from them about in the shadow of the tech giants, prospering in the giant shadow. We've heard this morning a really interesting stories about what it means, the implications for a community when the FANGs come to town. And we're going to talk about all the rest of us that don't have FANGs in town and what those opportunities and challenges might mean. But I want to just start out by just saying a quick word about Blandin Foundation. We're Minnesota's largest private philanthropy. We're a foundation based in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, which is about a 3-hour drive straight north of the Twin Cities. How many of you been to Minnesota? Let's see in the audience. So straight north of Minneapolis, St. Paul, near the headwaters of the Mississippi River is a small town in Grand Rapids where I get to work at Blandin Foundation. We're all about helping rural communities name and claim their future. So it's very much in keeping with the theme today. And at Blandin Foundation, our mission is to strengthen rural communities. And for about a dozen years now, we've been working on helping rural communities get the broadband that they need and want to ensure a prosperous future. We all know that change happens, but we can choose what those impacts are. And we have found, we've been using the ICF framework for about a dozen years in the over 40 communities that we've worked in across Minnesota, and have found it a really compelling and helpful framework to help city leaders and others understand all of the 6 elements and how that's all part of a strategy. I just want to take a minute and ask my team if you just raise your hand. We have about 11 of us here from Minnesota who've been implementing ICF framework across rural Minnesota, and some of us are here for the first time in New York City, so it's very exciting both to be in this great town and to be with others of you who are using this framework so effectively around the world. I was especially thrilled this morning. We came upstairs and Norman Jackness shared with you that video of people singing about broadband. That was our conference about 5 years ago in Duluth, Minnesota. We have some people here from Duluth. We're trying to beat the drum for community-centered broadband development. So thank you for having us here. Thanks for this opportunity. We're going to start out by, we're going to kind of have Andy and Wendy and Sam have really unique stories to tell about the roles that they and their institutions, and in some cases their enterprises, are playing and trying to help communities really bring home the benefits of broadband-enabled economic development and have determination and well-being and prosperity at the heart of that. And so we're just going to kind of go down the line, and I'm going to start off with Andy, who to my left, Andy Saldana. He's currently the director. He's not a native New Yorker, but has found his way to New York, and he's currently serving as the director of operations for an outfit called the New York Tech Alliance, which we're going to hear about. But that grew out of an effort that really came out of Andy's brain about New York Tech Meetups. I know many of us have probably been involved in Meetups, but this is kind of the mother of all Meetups, and so like to hear more from Andy about that. And sitting right here in the shadow of some of the tech giants as well. And I understand that you've had 300 New Yorkers show up for these monthly. I'd just like to, maybe you could start out by telling our audience a little bit about what was the New York Tech Meetups, where did that idea come from, what were you trying to achieve, and how has it evolved, what's going on with it today?
Yeah, definitely, just a few little corrections. I'm actually the executive director of New York Tech Alliance, which is the nonprofit that runs the New York Tech Meetup. And the New York Tech Meetup was started by Scott Heiferman of Meetup.com. He started it back in 2004 when there wasn't a lot of tech being built here in New York City, just to bring like-minded people together to start the discussions around building tech and collaboration here in New York. It quickly grew, and when I joined the organization in 2013, we were already at 12,000 members in the Meetup group, running a monthly event that was selling out, holding 1,000 people every month, showcasing amazing tech startups within the ecosystem. Over the last couple of years, we've seen tremendous success. The group now has a membership of over 61,000 members, and we are the world's largest meetup group. And it is at the center of what we do and where we are moving the organization. We still bring together people every month. On average, it's about 300 to 350. We still showcase technologies that are new and being developed through a show and tell type model, but our reach has grown to beyond just the show and tell piece. We're looking into education and creating equity and access. And so we help create what the New York tech ecosystem is, and now we want to leverage the community that we've built to make sure that everyone in New York has access to the community that exists.
You know, I really loved what Mayor Jameson from Queens on Sunshine Coast said about how do we take our communities along with us, and it sounds like that's what you're really focusing on.
Exactly, and it's trying to make sure that we are reaching out to all 5 boroughs, that all 5 boroughs have representation within the tech ecosystem, that anybody who is coming to New York has access to that ecosystem. One of my favorite stories recently is there's a program called Access Code or Pursuit now out of Queens, and they are a workforce development coding school that has a 9-month program teaching students how either iPhone or Android development or full stack development. And most recently, in their most recent class, they had about 6 Uber drivers participating, and it's just amazing to see, and they're all immigrants, so it's just amazing to see that path that exists from coming into New York City as an immigrant, working as an Uber driver, and then learning coding skills to enter the tech ecosystem. And just that story alone is an example of what we're trying to foster within the larger ecosystem.
Let me just ask you one more question before we go on to Wendy. Is your footprint of engagement New York City proper? I mean, have you thought about, I mean, what is your area of engagement?
Yeah, so we really focus on New York City proper, the 5 boroughs, and again, creating representation within the 5 boroughs. But our reach extends globally. We host parties from I think almost every country we've had conversations with. We've had startups that have been brought to us. I mentor a number of accelerators and incubator programs. So I get to interact with companies from all over the world. And one, for example, the Swedish American Chamber buys out our meetup to host 10 upcoming startups when they bring them to New York. And it's a great opportunity to showcase the different technologies that are being created around the world to the larger New York tech ecosystem. And just locally, we have reach into upstate New York, Hudson Valley, and then I have personal stakes in Montreal, where I helped start another organization called Queer Tech. So the organization as a whole, because we are based in New York City, does have reach globally to all the ecosystems that exist.
I know one of the pillars of the ICF framework that is particularly close to our heart at Planning Foundation is the digital equity, digital inclusion aspect. And I wanted to ask you, in your work, do you have intentional efforts to try to focus on inclusive and historically marginalized communities as part of your work, or not?
Most definitely. I think it is, we are moving, I will say that it's part of my vision, is to move the organization in that direction so that we are encompassing some of the marginalized communities into the larger ecosystem. I definitely have some personal stakes in those issues, the LGBTQ community, as well as the Latino, Latinx community, and so I want to see the greater tech ecosystem be more representative of the everyday people that I interact with in New York as a whole. And so I'm working to help the organization move in that direction with that lens in place. It's been a couple of years of trying to move in that direction, and we're making some real stride. And we have all of these amazing community partners that are doing the work on the ground in their communities, in the outer boroughs, making these things happen. And so we're just trying to connect them and elevate their work to the greater ecosystem.
Nice, thank you. Wendy, let's turn to you. I'd like to introduce to the group Wendy Lawson. Wendy, I'm sorry I got the detail about your bio. You're wrong, Andy. And Dean of the School of Health, is that right? At Mohawk College, which is in Hamilton, Ontario. And I guess you guys call yourself the Golden Horseshoe there. And it actually, she's living in Ontario, but it's actually south of me in Minnesota, because Canada does that thing. So,
I like to say we are the North here.
yeah, that's right. Yeah. So, and Hamilton is right on Lake Ontario, and I Google search learned that you have about 500,000 metro area and almost 750,000 in your larger area there. So it's quite a large population center. Hamilton and particularly Mohawk College came to the attention of the ICF founders and leaders because they just found it to be a remarkable community college that's really focused on prepping knowledge workers for the future, using all kinds of innovative technologies, incubators, accelerators, consultations, and with a vision of future-ready learning for life. So really focused on prepping people for the new information economy. I'm wondering, Wendy, if you could talk to us a little bit about the mission of your university and how you see your role in helping the communities that you serve be tech ready and ensure that nobody's left behind in the economy.
Thanks so much, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. So, as Bernadine mentioned, I'm the Dean of the School of Health at Mohawk College in Hamilton, Ontario, and a lecturer for the Department of Pediatric Medicine at McMaster University, which is right next door, also in Hamilton, Ontario. I am thrilled to be here today and talk to you a little bit through the lens of post-secondary education and what disruption and the acceleration of disruption is causing us to talk about at tables around what this might do to our educational templates. Historically, post-secondary education, both at community colleges and at universities, has not exactly been nimble. And we recognize that we are faced in the coming decade with a significant amount of change and a need to respond to it. We have a mandate across the sector really to work with our communities to fulfill the labor market needs. We have a mandate to ensure that our graduates are future ready, and there's a lot more that's unknown about that, frankly, than what is known right now. We hear that approximately half of the jobs as we know them in the next decade will change dramatically. Many will disappear, many new jobs will be created that have not even been invented yet, and how does the post-secondary sector prepare for and respond to that? So we sort of drill down in answer to your question to the things that we do know. We know that there is going to be a suite of human skills that is required in our graduates in the future. We know that we have to enable students to be flexible, to be agile, to be critical thinkers, and to be very resilient. We know that we're not training people anymore for a career that will span their life, that we are likely training people who will be in many, many, many different jobs, taking many turns and along the way, and need to be able to embrace the concept of lifelong learning. We know that we need to have the right people in the right jobs in order for our economies to thrive, and we know we don't want to leave anyone behind. And so I think that there's a lot of themes that are emerging already in our discussion. I think that the key priorities for us as a sector right now are looking at how we work with policymakers to change the way post-secondary education is delivered, to look at modular deliveries, things that are flexible, things that are 24/7, and most definitely education that is accessible. One of the ways to look at meeting the labor market demands and leveraging great skill sets and amazing people in our communities is really working on access strategies. cutting through poverty, breaking down barriers, bringing education into the community so that you can really prosper in your communities from the ground up, as well as build new entrepreneurs and attract new business and big business, small business to your areas. So it's a multi-pronged approach about looking at how do we enable our students with core skills in critical thinking, problem solving, flexibility. Largely, we've focused on experiential learning, authentic experiential learning opportunities, making sure that our students are working with industry on real problems, making sure they have exposure to applied research endeavors. These are the types of activities that build skills around creativity and courage and resiliency. Then also working hard on our access strategy and taking communication out into our education out into the community, and definitely looking at how we can fill the need around retraining and upskilling as things change in our community. So those would be probably our primary focuses.
Yeah, that's so interesting, and I know a big theme and part of the power of the ICF framework is the language in this conference is they talk about the triple helix. You have all the different sectors working together towards some shared goals, and of course, partnership and collaboration is so key to that. And I know in our work in Minnesota, our educational institutions, community colleges, technical institutes are really a key asset. Can you give our audience some examples about how Mohawk College is collaborating and partnering with other institutions in your region?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, we don't really do anything anymore by ourselves. It just doesn't work that way. Education used to be the business of colleges and universities, but that has changed. Now industry is educating our students, the community is educating our students, industry is educating us. We're solving industry problems. The lines are completely blurred between what the rules are, and everyone is working towards a common goal. So I'll give you one example, which is in our access strategy. So Mohawk College, McMaster University, the City of Hamilton, Economic Development, the Innovation Factory in Hamilton, Ontario, a large number of industry partners have all come together in an access initiative called City School. So City School is a concept that is meant to bring education into high-risk neighborhoods and cut through poverty to try to offer an education to individuals who otherwise would not have access. The way we do this is in a massive collaboration of efforts taking City School into the neighborhoods. So we have a City School initiative in downtown Hamilton at our Eva Rothwell Center, which is very accessible to our low-income residents. And we also have mobile classrooms that go out into high-risk neighborhoods, and we offer free college credits. And the idea is that we try to inspire people who maybe have not had access to an education, who may be the first person in their family to ever have an opportunity to take a college credit, and break down that barrier of this isn't for me or I can't do this. And we really work with the city, with our industry partners and community to align the types of offerings that are delivered through City School to the labor market needs of the community so that there's a clear pathway to a job for individuals. So this is one way that we're working together to try to build some capacity in areas such as technology, where there is a need in the labor market, and also build some community prosperity.
That is so inspiring, and I'm just dying to ask you more questions, but we're going to go on to Sam and then circle back. And they do have this awesome app for everybody, so we'll, if you've got questions, you can use that, and then I'll invite people to just raise their hands too if you like. Sam Hasty is with us, co-founder of LIGHT, which is a cool acronym. It stands for Let's Innovate Through Education. And he's currently the director of finance of that organization. Is that right, Sam? And here's LIGHT's mission. Listen to this: to equip African American and Latinx students with 21st century skills to create wealth. Pretty bottom line, to create wealth. We know all the wealth creation disparities in the nation, so that's an amazing mission. Sam started out, you spent 3 years in Teach for America in Memphis. Anybody here from Memphis? No, okay, so you can tell all kinds of stories. I won't know it. But most recently, he was in Poland for a year with a Fulbright scholarship, working on entrepreneurship development and finance into new ventures in rural areas. So that really got my interest. Sam, tell us about Light. Tell us how you got inspired to found it, what it is, and what you're learning about supporting entrepreneurs through that work.
Yeah, thanks. First, I'm a little upset with Wendy. She sort of stole my thunder there. I was so excited to talk about, not how in the 21st century we need to prepare people for the skill of how to learn as opposed to specific concrete skills, because those skills are getting phased out and you really knocked it out of the park.
You're right.
Basically Light is an 8-year pipeline of support for minority students in Memphis to give them the skills to compete in the 21st century workforce and create wealth in their communities. I think for generations now, we've seen whether it's nonprofits or governments or for-profit entities come into low-income communities and attempt to fix those communities. And fundamentally, it's about providing the existing assets in communities with the resources they need to help those communities grow and thrive. And so that's sort of the core of our mission. We start with an entrepreneurial program with 17-year-olds, where over 6 months we give them a little bit of seed investment and they launch businesses with us. As you might imagine, 95% of the businesses are terrible. But our students are getting really pivotal skills that every business needs that our schools are not teaching. To some of Wendy's earlier points, at least in the US and especially in Memphis, in education, I come from the classroom, our accountability metrics, our state tests, promote something called convergent thinking, right? Which is one pathway to one right answer. It's how we train people for the workforce in the 1950s, because those people were meant to be trained for assembly line tasks. You were supposed to do one thing really, really well 1,000 times a day. As we know, all those jobs are being automated out. And whether they're going to be automated out today or next year or 10 years from now, they're moving out. What we do is promote something called divergent thinking, which is this idea that there are multiple pathways to multiple right answers. What we all know in the work that we do today is that it's very rarely binary, yes or no. It's much more often, how do we assess the pros and cons of various choices we have and then choose the best option. And what this pipeline of support does is promote that type of thinking with some of the real world application that you're talking about. And then finally, the sort of, I think, last value add to the way we're approaching training and education is that sort of unequivocally, the cognitive science research supports the idea that you learn exponentially more quickly when you have an emotional connection to what you're doing and ownership over what you're doing. And I think what's so powerful about the way entrepreneurship has the opportunity to change people's relationships with workforce development and growth is that our students are pursuing things that they really care about. They're launching businesses that matter to them by identifying community problems in their community that they're trying to address. And that we've seen has yielded exceptional skills growth for our students.
Could you give us an example? Pick out somebody or
I'd
tell a
love
story?
to.
Yeah.
Thank you for setting me up.
Yeah.
So just, the first year we did this when we were piloting it, we had a 17-year-old who was reading at a 4th grade level. So roughly the level of an 8-year-old. And if you asked this student to write a paper about Shakespeare, he'd fall asleep, as I would have when I was 17. But with us, he wanted to start a food truck because in his neighborhood there was only Burger King and Popeyes, 2 fast food restaurants that weren't very healthy. And he said, I want to provide a healthy food option for people in my community. So we said, great. We gave him a little bit of seed investment. He used that money to make a logo and rent a food truck and rent the supplies. And he's an example of a business that wasn't particularly successful. He had 5 customers on his first day. But when he was working on his materials for his business, like his one-pager, for example, his executive summary, he was all in. I mean, he was working his butt off. And the first one wasn't very good, but I gave him feedback, he got right back into it. And when he was trying to make connections to people in the community for his food truck, he was aggressively writing these emails And you know what, I think connecting via email is a 21st century skill, right? Being able to build out your network is an important 21st century skill, regardless of how technology changes the game. Fast forward now 6 years later, Kylan has just graduated from University of Tennessee at Chattanooga. He's got a 3.8 GPA, he's got a full-time job that started 2 weeks ago, and he's making $60,000 a year. So we didn't teach him 8 years worth of reading, right? But we showed him when you have an emotional connection to what you're doing, your skills growth just flies through the roof. And it fundamentally changes the way that you think about learning and the way that you think about applying yourself to real world problems.
That is a beautiful story. I bet you a lot of stories like that.
We do.
So in putting light together, what in this theme of collaboration and partnership, who else is at the table with you? Who else are you working with to set up this pipeline for entrepreneurship?
Yeah, so we have a partnership with the University of Memphis. Any high school student that goes through our program gets 12 college credits, which is huge cost savings for them. Several of our students come from the lowest income portions of the city. The local government in the city of Memphis, the Office of Diversity and Compliance has supported us with several grants, and then serve on board. And we're now actually in the process of licensing out our model to a few different municipalities. Yeah.
Well, circling back to kind of our theme about in the shadow of the tech giants, Andy, I wanted to ask you, you see a lot of amazing ideas come through your meetups every day. Can you share with us what are the niches that are emerging? Where do you see opportunities here that to fill in and bring home the technology?
Well, they're so broad in New York City. I think that's really what makes New York such a unique ecosystem, is that we are not focused on any one vertical. There's fashion, media, finance, and so startups being developed in those areas are just leaps and bounds beyond some that I've seen from other ecosystems, especially from places outside of the U.S. And it's just amazing because that richness in the ecosystem and diversity of thinking and the diversity of the types of industry really foster that innovation in a real way. Of course, the hot trends right now that I'm seeing are blockchain and AI. Tons of startups in those fields, cybersecurity startups, as well as a lot of real estate in New York, of course.
Sure.
and it's weird because you see the startups, like I get to see a ton of applications that come through our pipeline, and it's really strange how, I started in 2013 with the organization, and I was seeing a lot of connection apps, like collaboration and networking apps for conferences like this, and I promise you, I got like 20 a week that were pitched to me, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then they went away, and we fast forward 6 years, and I'm starting to get that again. So it's weird how those cycles happen, and now that I've been in the job long enough, I'm starting to see those trends reemerge in very different ways. But I literally saw the exact same app I saw 6 years ago. It pitched me just last week. So.
Well, you can probably grade the event app for the ICF team here. So
Most definitely. My background is event management and logistics, so I'll help you out.
nice. So Wendy, we heard yesterday, you weren't able to be with us yesterday, but from Drucker Institute, this idea about, it's not about workforce development, it's about creating learners, so that people can say, I'm not a plumber, I'm a learner. I thought that was just such an awesome, I'm gonna take that back with me. But there's a tension, right, for a community college. You're supposed to be training workforce, the immediate needs and the longer term, we talked, creative, entrepreneurial, own their own learning. How, from an institutional perspective, do you balance that tension about meeting immediate workforce needs and then helping your community understand your role is really about preparing people that see themselves as lifelong learners?
It's a good question, and it's a very, very complex situation. I think it's complex anywhere you go in the world. I would agree that we're moving to a skills-based economy rather than a jobs-based or credential-based economy. But currently the system isn't built that way. We live in a world that has binding policy directives. We live in a world where the Ministry of Education dictates exactly what we have to deliver in order to get a certificate or a diploma or a credential. We live in a world where many, many professions are externally accredited and very, very rigid standards that don't necessarily speak to the needs that you just mentioned. So part of it is advocacy. Part of it definitely is an advocacy campaign. And the other part of it is finding ways to still meet those deliverables and feather in the rest. So how do you teach someone how to learn? How do you teach someone how to be creative, how to have courage, how to take a chance? I think it really does come back to those authentic experiential learning opportunities. And so what we've built in is a commitment that every one of our students in every one of our programs will have an opportunity to have an authentic experiential learning opportunity at some point in their journey. And that could take many forms. It could be a capstone project that is a partnership with somebody, with an industry partner who has a problem and is looking for a solution. It could be an applied research project. We have quite a large applied research department called IdeaWorks, where we work with industry and community partners in our region, and actually in quite a large catchment, who have challenges but maybe don't have the resources to solve those challenges, come into our institution. We have a lot of fantastic technology. We have faculty and staff with all sorts of subject matter expertise across multiple disciplines, and we have a workforce of inspired students who want to solve their problems. And by participating in those activities and many, many other activities like them, they are developing those skills often without knowing it. And we were the first college in Canada to offer a co-op program, and so we still are very proud of that and grow that opportunity. So any time that we can put our students into the workplace or into a situation where they have an authentic problem to solve, that's been something that we've been trying to focus on.
You mentioned being a leader, so I did, we have a impressively international audience here. And you're speaking from a Canadian, perspective. How path-breaking is your college, or is this where the secondary, post-secondary education is moving? Do people get this, or are you guys way out in front?
When you talk about the global stage, we are really working hard to build partnerships globally and to work on international projects, but that has not been something that I would say we're way out in front on. We are, however, very collaborative in working with other educational institutions as well as industry and community partners. So what we've found is that we work within the Canadian system, so we do focus a little bit on that, but we really do have a national presence. And I would say that it's because we work with other colleges and universities nationally that we do, not because we could be on our own. It's because there's an openness in the sector right now that is less competitive than it used to be, and that has determined that to break down barriers and to really see the change that needs to happen, we are stronger together. So you're seeing more shared projects, shared initiatives across the college and university sector, certainly across Canada. And then we have project-based initiatives that are international in various different ways.
Good, yeah. Sam, your work with promoting entrepreneurship and helping bring access to opportunity to historically underserved communities is kind of at the heart of two of the pillars of the ICF framework: innovation and knowledge workers and digital inclusion, all that stuff. What advice do you have for others here in the audience what are the critical enabling factors that really promote entrepreneurship among the communities that you're attempting to serve?
I think that entrepreneurship has been commoditized in a way that is sort of has the potential to take away what it's ultimately there to do, which is disrupt and change and create. And so I think a lot of this ties back into what Wendy's saying, which is how can we ensure that the people that we're supporting have the wherewithal and the training to adapt quickly and to create and to persevere in the face of great challenge. And I think that if that's where your focus is, how can we put students in the driver's seat of their own learning so they have these opportunities to develop perseverance? Because you don't develop perseverance by a teacher telling you, get to the next question, right? It comes from inside, right? It's internal.
You know, that's so interesting because we work at the community skills, so our unit, if you will, of impact. I mean, what we're trying to, is at the community level, and yet resiliency and flexibility and persistence, tenacity, are skills that you need to have at the community level as well, not just at the entrepreneur level.
Do you mind if I just
Please,
share
please.
one very quick thing, because I love that concept so much. And we just have a very new initiative, so I have no statistics on it yet, but I think it's exciting and aligns. And that is this idea that the learning, even in our current system constraints, doesn't have to happen in the classroom. So we've just recently, in one of our health programs, our personal support worker programs, so PSWs, I think, across the sector, there's a tremendous shortage of individuals who can care for people in the community who need care. And we partnered with a large long-term care facility, Schlegel Villages, in Wentworth Heights in our community. And we taken a cohort of PSW students that never comes on campus. They do their entire training, start to finish, in the long-term care facility, seeing clients every day, and still managing to use different modes of delivery, different ways to meet all the benchmarks that are required by their program. And it's wonderful because it's a type of learning that the students seem to really love. They really, really need the help in the community, and people benefit so much from having our students in that space. The individuals that live there are so grateful. And we're able to pilot something that could maybe solve a lot of problems around capacity, but bringing it right back home. And that's something we really want to do.
So that's a great example, yeah. And we just got a minute to go, but I'm gonna close up with thank you. I did get a question on the app. Nice work. About the sort of theme of the conference about tech giants. And Andy, I'm gonna put this to you. It's about how does the tech giants' shadow affect your work? So affect your meetups. How do you see their shadow?
They definitely support the work that we're doing. They're all partners with the organization that I run, and they're always interested in the new innovation that's coming out of the startup ecosystem. And so there is some great partnerships we have with some of the large companies. One in particular is Google, and we work very closely with them here in New York City to help train more entrepreneurs. And right now they actually have this amazing space on 8th Avenue called the Grow with Google space that is a flagship space for their Grow with Google
What did you
program.
call it, a flash strip?
Flagship
Flagship.
space for their Grow with Google program, which exists around the country. And so it's really reaching out into the local communities and trying to empower the community organizations and the fledgling entrepreneurs in the ecosystem with the tools, and provide them with the tools necessary in order to grow their own businesses. And so I think it's really useful to have those relationships with those large companies, because they're looking for customer development, they're looking for adoption, and they want the future entrepreneurs using their tools. They want access to the new innovative ideas that are happening, so that they can buy them up or help them succeed in however. And it's I was very nervous about having that relationship with Google from the beginning, because I thought it might pull away from the community, but they've been a very active community partner. And we have that relationship with companies as they grow. WeWork is another one that started here in New York and very small when they began, but we've seen them grow beyond globally. And it's amazing to see how we have also helped our community benefit from that growth. Meetup is another example in our platform, and of course we acquired them. So it's just all, how does it's about those relationships that you foster. And to the point of both panelists, it's about that industry and education partnership. We're working with CUNY, the community colleges here, to figure out how we can help facilitate some of those relationships in a deeper way, to provide a lot of the students with more soft skills training, more interview skills, more resume writing, things of that nature that they're not necessarily getting the training in the classroom, but it's super important once you enter the workforce, especially building your network. We see that that is definitely important to getting your first job.
Thank you, and it is all about people in the end-to-end relationship. So on that note, thank you very, please join me in thanking this terrific panel.